Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're stepping completely away from the frantic daily news cycle to take a quiet, forensic, clear-eyed look at the deliberate unraveling of the American middle class. We're exploring the history, the hard data, and the quiet call to arms presented in the introduction to the book, The Slow Boil of the American Frog. We're going to look at the water we're all swimming in right now, how the author argues the temperature got so impossibly high, and most importantly, how this book suggests we can actually reach for the thermostat. Let's start in the dark. It is 4:14 a.m. Before her eyes even have the decency to open, Emily's hand is already groping across her nightstand. The floor is freezing. She has exactly one precious minute of grace before she has to force herself out of that bed and into the grind. The lamp stays off, though, because her husband, Mark, has finally just collapsed into bed after working a grueling graveyard shift. You see, Emily and Mark aren't just working. They are relentlessly running on a treadmill that just keeps speeding up. Between the two of them, they are juggling 4 separate jobs just to survive. Emily handles a nursing aide shift starting at 6 a.m., then she heads straight to a shipping store front desk until 8 p.m. Mark? Well, he works inventory at a big box store 5 days a week, and then he moonlights as a delivery driver on evenings and weekends. 4 jobs between them.
And here is the crushing reality of 2026. Their combined, nonstop hustle nets them $90,000. Now, decades ago, that number bought real breathing room. But today, it pays the mortgage, the car, the utilities, the lingering student loans, and then, quietly, it forces them to rely on SNAP benefits just to pick up their grocery tab. It forces Emily to postpone a doctor's appointment for 3 months because an $80 copay is simply out of reach. They're doing everything right. And yet, as the book argues, they are quietly drowning.
Section 2, The Great Contrast, 1950 versus today. The source presents a historical contrast that should really stop you cold. Think about 1950. A single-income factory worker in Detroit, a guy with no college degree, just a union card and a steady line, could buy a home, a car, afford family health care, take a summer vacation, and still stash away money for the kids' college, all on one single paycheck. Contrast that with Emily and Mark today. They earn nearly double that amount in inflation-adjusted dollars. They work 4 jobs, and they still flirt with food insecurity. It's the exact same country, the exact same hard work, but a completely, radically different life. The author really stresses this point, this modern exhaustion. It isn't a cautionary tale of bad personal decisions. And it's definitely not just the mysterious, invisible hand of the market shrugging helplessly. No, it is a completely altered economic reality. Just look at the sheer math of survival here. Today's workers are actually earning more in real, inflation-adjusted dollars, but the massive spikes in the costs of housing, of cars, healthcare, and college have effectively drowned them out. The book points out that while the paycheck itself is technically bigger, its pulling power has been intentionally diluted. Section 3, Fingerprints of Deliberate Policy. The source highlights one absolutely staggering number, 306%. Between 1948 and 2025, the productivity of the American worker rocketed by a massive 306%. Americans are working harder, working faster, and producing more value than at any point in history. But you have to immediately follow that with this damning contrast. In that exact same period, real compensation for the typical worker climbed only 153%. The wealth was created, absolutely, but it just didn't go to the people creating it. Economists call this the Great Decoupling. You see, for 25 years right after World War II, those 2 lines, productivity and pay, they danced in near-perfect harmony. But then, in the early 1970s, they parted ways. Productivity kept climbing the mountain, while pay just flatlined in the valley. And the book argues this divergence isn't some market mystery. It is the trace evidence, the fingerprint of deliberate policy choices made over decades to route the gains of growth straight uphill to capital. This data stands in such stark contrast to the original foundation of the modern American promise. Back in 1937, Franklin D. Roosevelt stated, "The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much, it is whether we provide enough for those who have too little." The author points to this as the quiet, moral standard we once held for economic progress. And just a year later, in 1938,
FDR drew a line in the sand, declaring that no business which depends on paying less than living wages has any right to continue in this country. The book argues that when you anchor that historical standard up against the modern reality of a $90,000 household needing food stamps, well, it feels like a profound, systemic betrayal of the American ideal.
Section 4. The 𝗕𝗏𝗶𝗹. This shift brings us to the specific metaphor that gives this book its title. It's a biological mechanism you've probably heard of, but maybe haven't felt wriggling under your own skin. The frog in the slowly heating pot never leaps. The heat rises so gradually, so incrementally, that the frog's nervous system registers only a pleasant warming bath, right up until the very moment escape is no longer possible. The author uses this to capture exactly what happened to the American middle class after 1938. The argument is that the temperature was turned up by specific people in specific rooms over specific decades. An almost courteous betrayal sold to us as progress. The source material for this explainer acts as a forensic ledger, mapping out exactly who turned those dials at the macro, organizational, and individual levels. Section 5. The Age of Intelligence. Now the book shifts its energy here from a heavy diagnosis to a bright, empowering path forward. It notes that we are now entering the age of intelligence, and the argument is that the very same technological tools that could accelerate this boil can actually become our new thermostat. We're talking about causal economics that asks why to fix the system rather than just measuring symptoms, impact investing that demands measurable accountability, digital twins that let us simulate and test policies before they harm real families like Emily and Mark, and pro-labor AI designed to lift workers up instead of just extracting their value. The text outlines these as a concrete, data-driven escape route, parts of which are already proven elsewhere in the world. I'll leave you with this quiet, powerful realization from the text. For a long time, we've been told that our discomfort is a personal failing. They tell you the water is fine. Well, it is not fine. But by the time you finish the pages of this book, you'll know exactly who turned the flame up, how they did it, and what it will take, together, to turn that dial back down. To build an economy that finally boils with possibility instead of betrayal.